So, in the current musical marketplace, producer has kind of become this term for someone who actually writes the music for the song. The music, not the lyrics of it. Yep. Whereas traditionally, a producer was someone like a project manager, in a sense.
Yes, exactly.
Like in the 40s, like a producer was the guy who knew all the musicians and who knew, like, okay, this is what this needs to sound like, gets everyone together.
Books the time, writes the checks.
Yeah. Whereas now, when people talk, like in the R&B, hip-hop, even pop world, when people talk about a producer, what they're talking about is actually someone who's like a co-writer to the song. Mm-hmm. And sometimes these people are real producers and can take a song to completion too, but sometimes they're just track guys who they can make a really great beat, but they don't know how to make a record, or they don't know how to produce vocals, or they don't know how to put it all together. When you're an artist looking for a producer, or like, you need to realize like what you need out of that producer. And you know, if you need a guy to build you a track, well, you should be looking for a track guy. If you need a producer who just knows all the right musicians and who has a vision for your project and knows how to produce a vocal and put it all together, you should be looking for that kind of producer.
Right.
I mean, this is just me, but I feel like at some point there needs to be a distinction with terms, like maybe executive producer, or like, or just call track guys rather than they're not producers.
Yeah.
Because a real like in the true sense of the word, and throughout history, a true producer is someone who, they're like the director of a movie.
Yeah, they're going to see it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And have calls the whole way through.
Yeah.
From what studio do we book to
who do we hire?
Who do we hire? Who's the mix engineer? Who's the mastering engineer?
And even like comping, like usually it's not the engineer's job to do the comping. That's the producer's job. And they might have to work with an engineer if they don't know how to run software and stuff. But like all those musical decisions are the producer's job, along with the artist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think every engineer has this where we have to make a lot of production calls.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah.
Way more than you think we should. Where, well, we're even when we work with producers that will do these production calls, they'll be like, just edit the vocal and I'll approve it tomorrow.
Right.
So now we're making a lot of production calls on comping the vocal, finding the emotion. Producer will come in and, you know, like a...
I guess what we're saying is there's no right or... like, there's no one way to do it.
Yeah.
But you have to know what you need and what you want. And if you do want to self-produce, knowing that, like, there's a certain process to making a record. Just like if you were like, I'm going to go make my own movie, and you don't know the first thing about making a movie, you should probably consult people who do, or at least work alongside them to, you know, so that you don't end up wasting a bunch of time and money.
A lot of what we do and what a lot of engineers or studios will do is that a fairly new artist will come to us, and they're kind of more or less the self-produced artist, and they'll come to us kind of for guidance and to almost be the other producer, but generally when that happens, we're kind of asking them a lot of questions about, you know, tonality, what they like to hear, and how they would like the album to sound like. And so we're trying to get a lot of examples, and we'll listen to a lot of things, a lot of reference material, trying to gauge what their songs will sound like in the end. But a lot of young artists, they're more or less going to have to be the producer on it. If they can't afford a producer, we'll help guide them through the process and, you know, make sure they're hiring the right people, the right musicians. Along with Megan at the studio, we'll help book the time, the players, and just make sure that myself hear the songs in advance, get a good gauge of what they want to do, and make sure that when we do have the players, it kind of represents that.
Yeah, and I mean, along with that, I would say, not to like discourage you from self-producing, but I think sometimes people don't realize how valuable having a producer is. At least having a producer who you know, knows what they're doing. Like, don't just get your friend to produce it because they want to be in the studio, you know? Like, having someone who's done this many times, or who, you know, who's a professional.
Yeah. Well, a gifted producer is, well, I mean, it could make or break your song.
Totally. Like, it does really make the experience, or the whole process, a lot better. Like, sometimes I've just seen it where artists, they are trying to self-produce and they don't really know what they're doing, and then it either just takes way longer than they thought it would, or more money because they end up like either making mistakes or having to redo things, or not realizing that to get the result they want, they have to do this rather than this.
Well, I find with a lot of the newer self-producers, I find if they have a really good vision,
that helps
at the get-go.
Yeah,
we can facilitate everything else. It's like that to me is no problem. The big thing I always say with self-production is communication.
Yeah,
and that's where a lot of like a newer producer, a newer like an artist that wants to self-produce, it's all about communication. So it's right from booking times, like being on top of the engineer to book times in the studio, to being on top of your editor or mix engineer and making sure, or if you don't know the right people, is making those emails and ask quotes from maybe 5 different engineers to mix your album.
Yeah.
And same with mastering people, 5 different mastering engineers to get quotes and see what they've done. So you kind of have to be on top of everything and know everything, and just always keeping the communication up.